Hi guys, and welcome to this episode of the Happy Knitting Podcast. My name is Julia and I'm coming to you as always from Munich in the south of Germany. Today is the first podcast in 2020, so Happy New Year everyone. Today is Sunday, it's the 5th of January 2020, which still seems really weird to say. I feel like I'm living in the future every time I check the date, but that's happening. So I've just come back from my Christmas and New Year break, so to speak. We've been traveling and seeing family for about 2 weeks, and we literally just came back to Munich about maybe 2 hours ago. I had a second breakfast, and now I decided to chat to you about what's been happening on the knitting front. So you would think 2 weeks I would have a ton of finished objects and works in progress and all of that, and that's exactly what I thought. But it didn't really happen. I mean, I have quite a bit of knitting to show you, don't worry. We have some finished objects, some works in progress, some acquisitions. So it should be a full episode, but I don't know. I kind of lost my knitting mojo quite a bit over Christmas. So I've also done a lot of frogging and I don't know. I just haven't made a whole, like sometimes when I come back from these holidays, we spend a week in the Alps doing pretty much nothing. I come back with like a stack of finished things, but I just don't. So that's absolutely fine. That's where we are right now. Yeah, I still haven't had any coffee. I'm not having coffee at the moment, and hence I'm feeling quite tired. But anyways, we will push through this episode, and I think it's going to be a fun one. So if you're watching for the very first time, thank you so much for giving me a go. I really, really hope that you will enjoy the podcast. And who knows, maybe you will become a regular viewer, join the Ravelry group, which is always linked right underneath this video, subscribe, whatever you want. For returning viewers, welcome back. Thank you so much for those of you who have been following me for quite a long time. It's been a few years now. And I know there are some people who actually have been following for at least the majority of that time. Anyhow, let's get started. So anything I'll talk about today, as usual, I don't have any show notes, but I do have project pages and they're usually quite good. So I will also leave a link to my project pages right underneath this video. It links to Ravelry, and there you can just click on whatever project interests you. And if I forgot to mention a colorway and needle size, if you don't understand me because English is not my native language, you can just check that out there and that should be good. So in terms of finished objects, I have two, but I can only show you one because the first thing I finished, thankfully, were the green socks that I was knitting for Kai out of some Lana Grossa chalet yarn, I think. It was like a green commercial sock yarn that had a black thread through it, so it looked kind of marled, kind of like a handspun. And I can't show them to you because they're currently on Kai's feet. And I didn't really want to take them off Kai's feet and show them to you before washing them first, so it's just a plain pair of green socks. Maybe I'm organized and I'll put in a picture. Otherwise, there's a picture on Ravelry. And you know what? It's just a plain vanilla pair of socks. So who really cares? Second, finished object. This is what brought my knitting mojo back. So I just didn't really feel like knitting. And because I had to pack yarn for 2 weeks, I just kind of packed everything. Like I packed hat projects and sock projects and sweater quantities because I just wanted to give myself the option to, whenever I feel like something, to be able to cast on. And this is what I cast on our first night on holiday and finished on the second. And it is a plain vanilla hat. Unfortunately, this yarn came without a ball band, but this is a Woolfolk Snow or Snö. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. SNO. And you may know this yarn. It's one of the Woolfolk yarns, but it is two different colors of yarn plied together. So it creates this really lovely mold effect. And yeah, you may remember I knit Kai a hat for his birthday out of the same yarn in November, and he really, really loved it. And I splurged and got myself one 50-gram skein as well. And oh my gosh, I love this so much. This is kind of the color of my coat. So it just worked so perfectly. And what I did is essentially I just cast on a bunch of stitches, and because I knew I wanted to knit a folded brim and a kind of longer folded brim, And this yarn only comes in 50-gram skeins, and it's quite pricey, so I wasn't going to buy 2 skeins. So I used the leftovers from Kai's hat to knit the inside of the brim, and then change colors. And so from the outside it's a one-colored hat, but I was able to use some leftovers, and I think I would have had enough yarn for this hat anyways, but I just didn't want to play yarn chicken, so I had the leftovers lying around, and it worked out really, really well. So it's a folded brim. I know there are people who sew the like folded brim afterwards, but what I do is I literally just knit twice the amount of length that I want, and then I will knit both through the stitches and through the cast on edge. And yeah, there we are. It's just a very, very simple hat in stockinette. I added these kind of decreases, which I think came out pretty nicely. No pattern for this, but I love this. I've been wearing it ever since, and it's exactly what I wanted. So very, very happy with this. I used 3.5 millimeter needles, which is a US size 4, and I think I cast on something like 110 or maybe 114 stitches. And I was going to change needle size after the brim, but I really like the needles that I was using, so I just stuck with them, and it worked out just fine. So that's my only finished object to show you guys. Not super interesting, but there you go. I'm really happy to have this in my wardrobe, because this was definitely, it was a splurge in terms of buying the yarn, but it was something that I always wanted to knit up relatively quickly into a hat, because it just matches my coat, and I need a hat because I usually always have like one hat that I wear all the time. And my previous one I've been wearing for a couple of years, which is my modified antler hat knit out of some John Arbon yarn. And that is very, very, very pretty. So this is a good replacement hat, and I love it. Also, maybe I should talk about what I am wearing. I am once again wearing the Ultra sweater by Ellie of Scandia. I think I wore this on my last podcast, so maybe it seems like I don't change my clothes for 2 weeks, but I promise I do. Anyways, I've been wearing this quite a bit. I still really, really love it. It's been a really good, nice, and kind of light sweater. I knit this out of Garnet Silk yarn, which is a Danish company. The yarn base is Black Hill wool, I think. And the only thing that I've noticed with this sweater is that it definitely, because it's kind of cropped, on me it rises up in the back. So it looks great from the front, but then I think I look kind of stupid in the back. So if I am going to knit this again, which I will, and this is no fault of the pattern at all, I think it's a lot of patterns that just happen to sit that way. I think I will add some short rows at the back, or just make like a longer hem at the back, because then I will look good from the front and the back. But again, that's totally my own body and fault and whatever, and not to do with the pattern. I think quite a lot of my sweaters do that, and I'm also not very used to the cropped length. So even though this isn't super cropped, because I have a very long torso, it just feels kind of new to me. So yeah, that is that. So before we talk about whips, let's talk about whips that don't exist anymore. I had planned a Christmas cast on, which I think I showed you the yarn last episode, with the Wollmeise yarn, and I knit an entire sock, and then I lost my knitting mojo, and I was just so sick of that sock, and I could just not face knitting that again. So I frogged an entire sock. And then I cast on my Christmas boxy, which you may also remember, and I had like this much done on it, which with like a million stitches, it wasn't too bad. But again, I just wasn't loving it. I wasn't loving knitting with a superwash yarn. I thought the gauge was a little bit too loose, and I just was not enjoying it. So I ripped all of that out, and it felt really good. And I think it definitely helped me in terms of getting my knitting mojo back, to just rip out the things that were weighing me down. I'm also painfully aware that I still have 2 shawls on the needles, which I haven't really worked on. Kind of don't want to rip them because they're beautiful, but anyways, that's where I was. But then I started knitting some new things, and everything got better from there. So in my Christmas bag, which I'm still going to use for a while, is a pair of socks. And the first sock is already done, so it's a half finished object. And this is some yarn that I've been treasuring in my stash for a while. I got this in a D-stash from a lovely viewer. Hi, you know who you are. This is new to me yarn, which is very hard to get for me because it is from the States, and as you probably know, I don't order yarn from the States because I just can't deal with customs and all of that. But I got it on a D-stash. This is yarn from Fiber Nymph Dye Works, which is so cool because hers was one of the very first podcasts that I started watching, like years and years ago. So this is Fiber Nymph Dye Works in the Bounce base, in the TARDIS colorway. And I'm sorry, the hype with the whole TARDIS thing is totally beyond me, but I love the colorway. And I originally got this to maybe knit some socks for Kai. It's a beautiful self-strapping colorway. And then he didn't really want the socks, so I was like, great, I will knit them for myself. And of course, now that they're knit up, he really likes them, but they will be for me. So let's put it on a sock blocker. By the way, I think I haven't talked about this for a while. People keep asking me about sock blockers, and what I do is I get IKEA placemats, and then I just cut out the rough shape of a sock. And I've been using them for years, and yes, sock blockers are pretty, but this totally works and you don't need to block your socks anyways. So just a tip for you there. So now you can see it much better. The first sock is done. I did an afterthought heel, and I'm not sure if I like the heel placement. I decided to do it in like the middle of this white stripe, but I guess it looks kind of neat. So the first one is done, and what I did is I cast on 64 stitches, did a 1x1 rib and then a 7x1 rib, so I knit 7, purl 1, just to make it a little bit more snug on the foot. And then I continued that on the front of the sock, but obviously not on the bottom of the foot. So first sock is done, second sock has been cast on, and these went pretty fast. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying working with a yarn that I don't get to see very often, if at all, again. So yeah, that is that sock project. And as per usual, all of my socks are usually knit on a 2.25 millimeter needle. Next up, I have another sock project which is slightly more slow going but still fun. In here I cast on one of my Zauberball skeins. Why am I pronouncing it the English way? Zauberball. Wolle Zauberball, which I'm sure you've heard of before. It's one of those yarns that a lot of knitters, I think, like. This is the label. The colorway is number 2402. And you may remember when I ordered this and I think 2 other Zauberball skeins, I usually only like the crazy Zauberball, which is the one where you have the yarn plied together, so it's much sturdier. And with this one, just from looking at the pictures, I didn't realize that this is a regular Zauberball. So this is the unplied version. It's basically just a singles yarn. But it does have nylon, and I figured, I mean, you can already see it's kind of fuzzy, but it's okay. So I decided to cast on a sock because I really like the colors, and I don't know, I felt like I tore up socks, so that's what I did. And I'm finally starting to get into a bit of a fun color because it was very, very dark for a long time. But this is where we are. So I think I started with 24 stitches and then just increased, and as you can see, the top of the foot is patterned in the Hermione's Everyday Sock pattern, which I just love. It's of course by Erica Luder. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and I've knitted quite a lot of times. And then the back is just plain stockinette, and that's where we are. So I'm basically, I think, going to knit a tube, because if I were to put in a heel, then I would have a jump after the heel with the colors. So I guess these are going to be afterthought heel socks as well. So I'm essentially just knitting a very long tube, and then I need to do it all again. I am enjoying the yarn. It's quite soft. I don't knit with Zauberball very often at all. I will say, I think also because I'm using quite sharp needles, I'm using the higher sharps, and this is a singles yarn. It's kind of slow going because I need to be careful not to split the yarn, and I don't know, for some reason they aren't going very fast, but I do really like it, and I really can't wait to get into like the lighter bits of the skein. I have a feeling that these socks are going to be completely unmatched, but I don't really mind. These are going to be for me, and yeah, so that is my second sock project. Socks kind of got me back to knitting. So then, what else have I been knitting on? Let's start with a sweater that you've already seen. This is the Line of Shapes sweater. And the yarn that I'm using, again, it doesn't have a label. I'm sorry, you guys. This is yarn from Sweden, from Ölcentrum, which I think is partly a Gotland yarn and partly something else. I think it depends because they have different yarn bases. Like a white base, and then more natural shades, and they dye on these different shades, which is really cool, and it creates a really, really awesome yarn. So I just have, I think this is 3 skeins of their whatever yellow, and I have been making a little bit of progress on my Line of Shapes sweater. So it is a top-down raglan sweater, which has some, I guess you would call it lace on the front. So you can see I have split for the armholes, and I'm just working down the body, and this is kind of hard to show because the lace really needs to be blocked out in order to see it properly. How can I show this to you? You get the idea. So I've just been knitting a couple of repeats every now and then on this. I'm really, really, really enjoying the yarn. If you're a fan of soft yarn, this might not be for you because it is definitely a very woolly yarn. I wouldn't say it is thick and thin, but you can definitely, like, this is proper sheepy yarn. It creates a lovely halo already while knitting with it. The stitches aren't super even, but I just really love it. And every now and then you get like dark guard hairs and everything, so you can definitely tell that this came from a sheep. And I really like this yarn, which is great because I have quite a lot of it in my stash. I had like a strange Ulzentrum craving about a year ago and just bought quite a lot of this yarn on sale. We still don't know if I'm going to have enough yarn. I'm definitely like a skein short, really, if I am going by the pattern. But I usually don't use that much yarn, so I think I should be okay. And what I need to do, and that's kind of why I've been stalling on this project, is I really need to knit the sleeves first, and then I can just knit the body as long as I have yarn for, or until I get bored of it. But that would mean like thinking and picking up for the sleeves and all of that, so that's why this has been kind of lingering. But I still really like it, and just looking at it, like the color and everything, I do really, really like this yarn. So that is my sweater number 1, and then after frogging my boxy, I cast on another sweater. I'm just really into all these like woolly yarns at the moment. They're just making me very happy. So here's a huge cone of yarn for you. This is a cone of yarn from Jamieson and Smith in their 2-ply jumper weight. And according to the cone, this is shade number FC6. And this is 500 grams of this. So you can usually buy this yarn in 25-gram increments. And it's a really, really great yarn for color work. But a while ago, I got a couple of cones. I mean, a while ago. At least a year ago. Because when you order it straight from them, which I think you can get it, is it Shetland Woolworks? Don't quote me on that, but it's something like that. You can Google it. You can sometimes get cones at a discounted price, and yeah, when this was discounted, I just jumped on it, and I think I could probably almost knit 2 sweaters out of a cone. I know that I knit my Ispre, my red Skandier sweater, out of a cone, and I used half of it. But sometimes it's nice to have that extra bit of yarn. So I cast on something with this that I've been wanting to knit for a while. It's been a project that I've been having on my wish list for ages, or on my queue on Ravelry. And then at some point before Christmas, I actually just bought the pattern because I knew I was going to knit it. And then the stars aligned. So here we are. What is this thing? It's a tent, really. This is the childhood sweater by Anke Strick, who I believe is a German designer, even though I am knitting from the English-speaking pattern, because I like to knit from English patterns. They make more sense to me. But it's a really cool top-down sweater with a almost like a turtleneck, but it's not like a close-fitting turtleneck. I think this is going to be the interesting part. This is the part that really interested me, but I think it could go very wrong or it could go really, really nicely. I don't really know. I'm thinking if I don't like it, I could always make it like a double, like a folded neckline, and it will still like be pretty high up, but it's doable. And because I'm using a very woolly yarn, this is a Shetland yarn, it's non-superwash. I feel like with a superwash yarn, this may become like floppy and flop over, which is just not the look that I like. But with this yarn, I think it might actually work quite well. So it has a turtleneck, kind of, and then it has a really interesting construction. I can't really show it to you, but there's a ton of short rows, and it has saddle shoulders, which I don't think I've ever done. I mean, I guess the pavement sweater by Vera Valimaki is kind of saddle shouldery as well, but this was a really interesting construction. And then you've bound off some stitches, and what you're supposed to do is knit flat for the back and the front, but I channeled my inner Ellie of skein there, and I added sticks. So no, my arm doesn't have to fit through this hole. Eventually I will cut this open, and this is where the sleeve is going to be attached, and it will work just fine, I think. So that's where we are with this. Really enjoying it. This color is just everything. Like this color, this yarn, the fact that it's like a marled pinkish salmon color. I just love it so much, and everything just went together perfectly. The yarn, the pattern. This is just such a fun knit. It is a lot of knitting. I will be honest. It is a ton of knitting, and I think this is going to be a tent. This is going to be quite big. I think I chose the second size, which is size small, but that already has like 15 centimeters or 6 inches of positive ease. But my gauge is also a little bit bigger, so it's definitely probably going to be more like, I don't know, maybe 8 inches of positive ease. I don't really know. So it's going to be really big, but it looks really cozy. And I'm hoping that this will be like one of those sweaters that I will just wear for years and years to come. So yeah, that's where we are. I'm almost finished with my steeked armhole thingy. And then I just need to, I guess, join it in, like finish the steek, join it in the round again, and I think it should be quite easy from there. So most of this was actually, I mean, it wasn't difficult knitting, but you had to do something every now and then. There were a lot of short rows, but I think from here on out it's going to be pretty smooth sailing, and with this one I don't have to worry about running out of yarn, which is great. So yeah, those are my current whips, except for my 2 shawls, which I'm not really working on at the moment. And you know what? I don't really care right now. I'm just happy to be knitting again. So, I'm kind of out of breath. Let's have a drink. I'm thinking I definitely need a coffee after this. Before the light goes completely, which it already kind of has. So, yeah, it's January. What can I do? I do have some sneaky acquisitions that I picked up along our travels. So first of all, around Christmas time, we always go to the Christmas market at my hometown, which is a beautiful city called Rothenburg ob der Tauber. I think some of you German viewers might know it. And it is actually one of the very few Christmas markets that I know that sells yarn. So I kind of make it a point to go there every year and just pick up some sock yarn, which is usually also very, very cheap there. This time I arrived on the last day of the Christmas market, like an hour before close, and she wasn't super excited to be selling stuff. She really wanted to go home. But I did get 2 little balls of sock yarn, Both of these are opal or opal. Opal, freche Freunde. And this one is colorway Scherzkekse or 9767. And this one is called Schaumschläger and it's colorway 9762. So both of these are kind of in the same series and I just thought they were so fun. Like, hang on, let me show you the pictures. Don't they look fun to knit? Like fun gift socks, or I don't know, maybe I'll finally knit something for my little niece. I mean, I never do. She'll be grown up soon. And what I really liked about these is they're so soft. And I think I've talked about this in the past with opal. Sometimes they're really soft and sometimes they're just really, really rough. But these, I don't know if they've improved their yarn quality over time or something, but these are just so squishy and so soft. And I think in terms of finished socks, I like my opal socks more than I like my Regia socks. But I don't knit with this yarn very often. So anyways, long story short, I picked these up. And I mean, how cute are they? How cute is this little patterning? So these are going to be socks eventually. And then we went to Hanover with my in-laws, and I also try to at least visit one yarn store when I'm there. So again, remember I had no Knitting Mojo, but I went into the store just very quickly. I think it's called Amano or something like that. It's quite central. And I just found a couple of little things that grabbed my fancy, so I decided to treat myself. So first up, I got this combination with the intention of holding it double and making like a nice squishy mohair hat. So this is a 50-gram skein of BC garn from Denmark, Bio Balance or Balance. And I really like this because I've talked about BC garn in the past a lot. This is one of the very few yarns that is certified organic yarn, so you're really, doing something good. And at the same time, this yarn is like I think any of the yarns are quite affordable. So I'm not sure why you don't see BC garn more. I feel like you don't really see it on podcasts and stuff, but it's a really cool yarn. So this is a 55% wool, 45% cotton yarn, 50 grams, and I also grabbed this skein of mohair silk by Shulana, which has about the same yardage, I think. And I think I'm just going to hold them together. And we will see what happens, because you may remember I knit myself a hat with drops mohair, and that was super itchy, and I didn't like it. But I've heard that drops is definitely one of the itchier mohair yarns. So I'm hoping that this will work out, and if not, it'll be a nice gift hat. And then one last thing jumped at me, and I just had to get it. And this kind of has a long backstory, but I knew that they had a little bit of hedgehog fibers last time I was there, which was exactly a year ago. And I'm not really sure if I talked about this, but I, in summer, joined the Hedgehog Fibers Fade Club, and I was so excited about it. But then I didn't really like most of the yarn that I was sent, which was so sad, because I liked all of their recent fades, just not the one that I got. So I destashed most of that and kind of told myself that one day I will instead get like a skein or two of hedgehog that I really, really like to kind of make up for it. So I found this skein. I think this was the only colorway of the hedgehog that they had in the entire store, and I just love it. This is Hedgehog Fibers sock yarn. They're 90-10 base, which I really like. I've talked about this in the past, in the Magpie colorway, and yes, it is just black and white, but isn't it gorgeous? I love it. And actually, all this is kind of really nice together. Maybe I should do not with this yarn obviously, but I could do like a yellow cuff, and that could be really cool. Or maybe not. Or I could do yellow stripes. So anyways, this again helped with my knitting mojo, and I love it. So these are the sneaky things that I picked up while I was traveling and stuff. And I think that kind of marks the end of the podcast. So in terms of life in general, like I said, we've been visiting family and then spending a week in the Alps, which was really, really nice. a much needed holiday as well. One of my nitty highlights of the trip definitely was I gave a lot of hand knit socks for Christmas. And I've talked about in the past how my father-in-law is just so knit-worthy. Like for a couple of years when I got to know them, I would only knit socks for my mother-in-law because I didn't want to be that person who like forces their hand knit socks onto everyone. And then at some point he told me that he would really like some socks too. And so I've been knitting him a couple of pairs ever since then, and he is just so knit-worthy, and he was so excited when I gave him his pair of I knit him like a pair of West Yorkshire spinner socks. I can't remember the colorway name, but it's one that has like really pretty blues and also like a mustard yellow, kind of like this. And he was like, that is so exciting because I have a yellow pair of pants and they never go with any of my socks. And then the next day we arrived in the morning and he proceeded to show me the pants and everything else that would go with these socks, and he was just so excited about it, which was so sweet. And I saw that he was wearing the pair that I gifted him for his birthday last year, and they were still looking good and fitting really well, but you could see that he has been wearing them. Like, he's not the kind of guy who would, put them on once a year because I'm coming and he wants to like look grateful. He really likes the socks, and that just made me so happy. Like, I think besides Kai, he is definitely the most knit-worthy person in my life. So I just thought that was really, really cute. Also, as you may know, I gave Kai a pair of socks for his birthday. No, for Christmas. The ribbed Wollmeise socks, and he really loves those as well. He first complained because I knit a 3x1 ribbed sock, and he didn't want ribbed socks. But then he put them on and realized that they are the best fitting socks ever, which makes sense because they're just a little bit more stretchy, so now he loves them and he wants to have more pairs of socks. So yeah, the sock gifting went really well, I think. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to talk about for now. Tomorrow, thankfully, because I live in Bavaria, we have tomorrow off work as well. So we have like a day to adjust and slowly, slowly, very slowly start thinking about re-entering like life with work and all these things that no one really needs. But thankfully, I think I only have 5 weeks to work before we go off on holiday, so oh well. I think that's it for this week. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you had a lovely holiday if you celebrated. Maybe you just took some time off and just hung out. Maybe you got to do some knitting. Maybe you got some unique presents. Who knows? So again, I will probably see you again next weekend. So until I see you, thank you again. Thank you so much for watching, for being viewers of the podcast, for coming back into this new year with me. And until I see you again, happy knitting. Bye.